This is Street Knowledge with Chris Graham.
Welcome to the podcast. Chris Graham, and I've got Rod Mullins with me. We're going to talk NASCAR as we do each Tuesday, as we're recording this podcast this Tuesday. And we've got to go back to Michigan first, Rod. Kevin Harvick with the win. Take us through the ending to that, how that race proceeded, and we're getting closer and closer to the chase.
Well, I tell you, it was one of those races where I think I did predict last week that there would be some kind of, at least some kind of bearing of fuel mileage coming into play with this. And yeah, it did kind of come down to that towards the very end because some of these drivers that were contending at one point had to come in and pit, get some fuel to top off, to be able to make it for the rest of the race. And Kevin Harvick did also. But Kevin Harvick ended up picking up his 7th win on the season. He's looking right now, if things go his way, he could be the first 10 race winners, that NASCAR's had in, I guess, quite a long time, but at least in this modern day period. But Harvick led 108 laps out of 200 out of this race, and one guy that was looking like he was going to make a run there toward the end before something happened with his car was Daytona 500 winner Austin Dillon. He got there and was starting to close the gap a little bit. You could see the interval at different times, and he was starting to close it. And then somebody come over the radio, and I think it was Austin Dillon, came over the radio and said, "I think I've got a flat." And then almost immediately, he slowed down on speed. Then after that, they determined he did not have a flat, but he picked up a vibration somewhere in the car that just affected his handling more than anything else and being able to keep up pace with Kevin Harvick. And what ended up happening was he just kind of left home. He was able to, they said later on that he had a cut tire out of it, but there was really no notice of that at all in the race. But he held on for a 4th place finish out of that in one spot ahead of Ryan Blaney. Brad Keselowski, he was the runner-up in this race, but I'm telling you, it was just a great overall win for Kevin Harvick because he dominated in this race. It was the 44th of his career, and, he's right now only 65 points outside of, right now, the contending leader of this whole thing, Kyle Busch, as they get ready to come to Bristol.
Bristol, that's right. We're going to talk about that coming up. Of course, you're going to be in Bristol this weekend, so we've been looking forward to this for a few weeks, the night race Saturday night. But let's do some off-the-track news first. I saw this one the other day and was a little surprised. Maybe I'll get a sense of whether you were surprised or not. Kurt Busch to Chip Ganassi. Talk about this. This is big news.
Well, Kurt Busch has kind of been in a holding pattern for about a year. I mean, he got there last year, and there were a lot of rumors saying that he was not coming back to Stewart-Haas Racing. Gene Haas, rather, who is the co-owner of Stewart-Haas Racing, said he wanted to keep Kurt Busch, so they did keep him this year. And, Danica Patrick moved out, and then they were able to bring Eric Almirola in, and so they've kind of had a more solid team this year than what they've had in years past. But I guess it's that option. It's that sort of option that they have, like in the other sports, of whether or not they're going to pick him up for another year or not. Tony Stewart's not indicated if he's going to pick him up, but Gene Haas has said, I don't want to really rule it out and everything of him not coming back to the team, but there's going to be a problem if he does come back to the team. Monster Energy will not be a sponsor on the card for next year. So they're going to square away their responsibilities, and they're going to stay with the Cup circuit itself and the sponsorship, and they're going to give that up, at least on that car. Now, the big question is, where will Kurt Busch go if he does get cut loose for that ride with Stewart-Haas? The rumor has it right now he might be replacing Jamie McMurray at Chip Ganassi Racing. And Busch said on Friday at Michigan, he said he's been talking to a lot of teams out there. There's nothing that's been signed. I think he's wanting to go, and he's wanting to at least get the feel for a lot of these other teams that are out there and see what they might be looking at. One rumor had come about that he might be stepping into a Richard Childress car next year. That's not set in stone at this point. Jamie McMurray has been, and and up and down, on again, off again driver for Chip Ganassi. I mean, this is a guy that won the Brickyard one year and then turned around and did a race you expected to win, say a Talladega or a Daytona. He falls flat on his face. So he's kind of unpredictable as a driver. He's a good driver, don't get me wrong, but McMurray said in the long run about this, he says, I'm not talking about any contracts. I don't want to discuss any type of, stuff that has to deal with that. But it sounds to me like the writing's on the wall, that McMurray may be out, and then it would be a heck of a feather back in Chevrolet's cap to be able to get Kurt Busch back in a Chevrolet next year, and especially with Chip Ganassi. And who knows? This might even set the stage up for another one of those double-double things. Racing at Indianapolis one weekend for Chip Ganassi, that's Sunday. Then get on a plane and fly in Charlotte on Memorial Day weekend and racing the Coke 600.
Interesting. Usually this is the off-season stuff we're talking about, but we're already seeing the blocks are moving around a little bit. More news off the track in that respect. Driver changes possible at JTG Doherty Racing. Talk about that.
Well, this is another one that's kind of up in the air. A.J. Allmendigger's been driving for JTG Doherty Racing, and then also you've got Chris Buescher he's been driving as well. And there's some rumors out there going on that these drivers, they're not secure. And Allmendigger's not had a good season so far. He was leading in one of the road races, doing really well in one of the road races, and then the car just went away from him, and he lost it before it was over with. The rumor has it right now that there are two Xfinity drivers that could be mentioned as possible new stars on the Monster Energy circuit next season, and that would be Ryan Preece, who won at Bristol, as a matter of fact, back in the spring race, and then Daniel Hemrick. So you've got those two drivers now being in contention, but when they went to confront and talk to JTG Doherty Racing, the team had no comment about it. So we're just going to have to wait and see. Silly season has kicked in full gear in NASCAR right now, and that'll remain to be seen. But we'll start getting closer through the month of September and October. We'll start seeing some of these things starting to fall into place, because you'll see some of these drivers trying to look to save the momentum as they pick up some, especially going into the month of September and October. They'll be looking at where they're going to land for possible rides for 2019.
One more bit of premature off-season news that we get this week. Ford unveils the Mustang for 2019. Well, what are some of the highlights here?
Well, Mustang has been around racing, of course, since about 1964. If you don't know what a Mustang is from Ford, then you've been living in a different world here for at least 50-some or more years. But Mustang has made its mark. They came into NASCAR Xfinity Series. They all wanted to get into what's called, I call it kind of the pony series, with the exception of the Toyotas. You have the Camaro, and then you have the Mustang. They were going to compete in the Xfinity Series. But now, since Ford has decided to pretty much do away with all of their cars, and that is all of them, like the Focus, some of the smaller brands they've had, the Ford Focus, the Fiesta, some of those others in there that they've had for so many years as nameplates for Ford, they have now decided just to produce a Ford Mustang as a sports car, and then, of course, keep with the SUV in mind, and then the trucks. But that's it. That's all they're going to be going with. And so, kind of going back to that old premise of win on Sunday, go in and sell on Monday, Ford's kind of going back to this a little bit more, and they're going with a little bit more of an attractive car to also kind of keep pace with where they've been this year, because Stuart Haas has been probably one of the most successful Ford teams that's been on the circuit. They're going to try to keep that momentum going and also try to boost some sales along the way, too, because it's going to be the only car that Ford is going to sell starting with this new model year coming out with the cars. Mustang will be it. The rest of them are going by the wayside. So it really was a no-brainer. Ford going with Mustang this time around. They've worked really hard here in the last couple of years, especially since entering the Xfinity Series, that they wanted to make the move and get ready to go on to the Monster Cup circuit. And the reveal came at a very poignant time for Ford, because they rolled off the 10 millionth Mustang off the assembly line in Flat Rock, Michigan last Wednesday. And so that was a big plus for Ford, and it just made even bigger headlines when going into Michigan before they raced.
Okay, so now we're ready. It is, we cover we talk NASCAR each week on Augusta Free Press or these podcasts, but we have to say that we're biased towards two of the weekends in particular, the 2 weekends in Bristol, because you're there now. So the night race is Saturday night, but Rod, get us ready for the race, but also get us ready for the weekend that you're about to experience. I mean, it's a busy weekend for you, a lot of interviews, et cetera, et cetera. So get us ready for Bristol this weekend.
Well, Bristol actually starts on Thursday night, as they will have a Camping World Truck Series race in town. That's always been a Wednesday night race, but Jerry Caldwell and company at Bristol Motor Speedway decided to move the race of the Truck Series race to a Thursday night to kind of keep a 3-race deal on 3 consecutive nights at Bristol Motor Speedway. I think it's going to be a plus. The fans love the truck races. It's not been there. They've been there off and on at Bristol here in the last few years, but they have recently gotten back to this schedule where they race the trucks on Thursday night, as I mentioned. And then, of course, Friday night will be the Xfinity race, and that'll be another big race for a lot of these teams. You can just bet on right now, Kyle Busch will not be trying to race for the 3-peat this weekend. It's not going to happen like he did this last year when he ended up with the sweep on the race on the Saturday night. But as we go into Saturday night's race, and this has now been coined as America's Night Race, it's the Bass Pro Shops NRA race that'll be at Bristol Motor Speedway. This is going to be, and I really went out on the limb with this one, Chris. This one's going to be a pivotal race. This is going to be one of the most pivotal short track races, I think, coming up on the circuit. Martinsville's always a factor, but I think this is the start of what's going to be the pivotal turn for some of these race teams. And when I say that, I'm looking at Ricky Stenhouse Jr. There are a lot of people that are looking at Ricky Stenhouse Jr. coming off of a pretty decent performance at the April race, coming in here and dominating. And he loves Bristol, but you've got a lot of other drivers that are going to be looking to make their mark as well on the high banks of Bristol this coming Saturday night. It could be an interesting race, and the tempers, as we have seen off and on through the season, tempers have flared at different times. This could be one of those race nights of where it could be a hot night in Bristol with tempers flaring, not only just the air temperature and the racing that's on the track, but the tempers could flare big time on Saturday night down in Bristol. So it's anybody's race. Anybody can pull this off and win it, but you have to give an edge right now, I think, to Ricky Stenhouse. He's probably the one that's hungry for a win. He's on the outside looking in, and one win to put him into this playoff picture. They were talking about this in the post race on Sunday. A big win by one of the people that's somewhere below, I think, 9th or 10th place could propel them into the playoffs and could give them a big momentum boost going into the September round of races. That you still have to go to the Brickyard, you have to go to Darlington. Oh, it's a pivotal race.
We have, of course, here at Augusta Free Press, because of Rod and his hard work this weekend, we'll have a lot of coverage of the weekend at Bristol. A lot of stuff going on, as Rod mentioned, with the busy weekend down there. So check out AugustaFreePress.com and follow Rod on Twitter. You can get tweets from Augusta Free Press, and we'll have it all for you here at AFP. Well, I want to thank Rod for his time, and thank you for listening. Signing off. Have a great day, everybody.